3 years. And then last year it went up to about $7 a month because we didn't raise the sewer rate. So we're able to do that over a 4-year period, which the rate still got up to where it needed to be, but it was maybe a little bit easier to handle that way. So one thing that came out of that, we didn't want to avoid trying to be in a situation where we're in that kind of spot again, having to do a rate study, do a big increase. From then on, we've been doing 5-year pro forma look forwards in all of our enterprise funds to try to look forward and say, hey, if we have capital needs or other type of needs out there, it's probably just better to raise rates a little bit every year rather than large increments more infrequently. So that was really what we're trying to do, is to avoid some large future increases. And from 2010 to last year, our rates were really set by the rate study. We just followed that exactly, except for the sewer rate, which we didn't increase last year. So when we look at what we're trying to do with rates, well, I'll go back. So what we're trying to do today is say, yeah, we've got these 5-year projections out there. We've looked at all these different things, and so that's what we're trying to present, and as we look at what our rates should be. So when we're putting rates together, there's a few things we look at. Obviously, we have operations, we have personnel, we have debt service requirements, and these vary a little bit from fund to fund. Some funds have more debt associated with them. Some funds have not a lot of debt, but they have other things that are out there. We also have this that I want to point out, and I think it's really important to point out this time. And this was really made evident when we did the stormwater bonds a few years ago, and we were talking to rating agencies that would rate our bonds, which determines what kind of interest rate we get. It's very important to them that we do show that we have some cash reserves. And in fact, what we've got in our policy right now for our enterprise funds is we would like to set a target of having 6 months operations cash in reserve at the start of the year. So that's not counting debt service, but for the personnel and operations part of our enterprise fund budget, we want to have 6 months reserve at the end of the year. That's a good number. Rating agencies like that number. I would also say, in addition to that, if we look forward just a little bit, we have 2 issues of water bonds that we did, one in 2006 and one in 2008. Those will be eligible to maybe be refinanced here in a few years. It would be very important for us to have a history of several years where we've had good reserves, where we've met all of our debt service reserve requirements and things like that as we go out, hopefully in a few years, assuming interest rates are still competitive and low, in order to do that. So I think that's
Are you applying the 6-month reserve goal across enterprise funds, or is it just certain ones?
All enterprise funds, not really the garbage, because we're never going to bond the garbage, and by and large, there's not personnel associated with that. But really, all of the other funds I would. Now, sewer fund, we have debt with the storm drain and debt with the water. We don't really have much debt with the sewer fund, and so but I think it's good practice as well. You know what I mean? I mean, it just makes sense to have something like that. And so kind of a standard that, like I said, when we met with rating agencies and talking with our financial advisor, 6 months is a pretty good number. So we can go there and say that. But I think it's important that I think there's going to be an opportunity to refinance some funds and save some money in a few years, and it would be very wise on our part to have because truth is, if we go back to 2010, 11, we did not have. We probably had our reserve targets, but we did not make our debt service coverage. Meaning, if you look at what's rates minus costs, what was left to cover debt, we should have a target with that. In fact, the target should be 125%. In fact, we have a rate covenant that we will be at 125%. And so the fact that we missed that a couple of years isn't really a good thing in our favor. So having 3 or 4 years of good history on that would be, I think, very important for us. And then we also have a lot of infrastructure repair and replacement needs coming up. We talked about storm drain. My eyes get really wide every time I see those really big numbers, just like everybody else does. But obviously we have a lot of infrastructure issues out there. Some of it can be met with impact fees, because we're having a lot of growth. We're bringing in a lot of impact fees, but that doesn't cover replacement of lines and things like that. And we do have some capital projects. In fact, what I gave you, it's these slides, but it also has a list of our capital projects. Some of those are replacing some of those old lines, realizing we have lines out there that are 50, 60, 70 years old. There's kind of a, I don't know when they would break, but there's a bit of a concern out there. So I'm just going to take them one at a time, and I've got a little pie chart here, and I can't see that either. I apologize. Look, I got it on my page here. What I tried to do is just to give people an idea of what the money gets spent for. So on the water there, you can see we've got 12% for personnel. Now, and I should say this water fund, that includes both culinary and secondary. They're separate fees, and we do keep them to some degree as separate funds, but the truth is so many of their costs are shared, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to split them down the middle. I mean, Greg's people do both culinary and secondary. And there's a lot of things that they do. So to come back and try to split up every cost that they have into culinary and secondary probably isn't a real effective use of time. So when we look at this water fund, it's both combined. And that's why most of the debt is obviously associated with the pressurized irrigation system that was put in. We also have an admin fee that's kind of like overhead costs, irrigation assessments, power expense, which has become a big issue recently in the fact that realizing when we have a lot of flow out of Battle Creek Canyon, we don't have to pay as much for power because we don't have to pump that water. With light years like we've had the last couple of years, and then with the damage that was received last fall, we've had to pump a lot more water in the past. So that number's higher than it has been. We also have this. This is the amount that we paid to Pleasant Grove Metro Water. That's the amount that they borrowed money to purchase a large amount of water several years ago. So that's really money to acquire water, and then just other operating expenditures and like that.
Question.
Yeah.
On the 40% debt service, how much of that is interest?
I don't know that I have that right in front of me, but it's probably 60% principal and 40% interest, something like that.
So you're looking at 20 percentage points of the whole is going towards interest.
Less than that.
Less than 20%, maybe 15.
Yeah. So what I tried to do on each one of these is identify a few things. So if we look here, I'll get back to the rate here. So our current rate is $15.60, and I've only done the base rate. Obviously, I have a large matrix of rates based on base rate and different amounts for different usage levels and things like that. I just put the base rate, but any proposal in the rate increase would increase all of the rates proportionally like that. If you look at what we got now, what we charge in rates, and then you back out all of our expenditures, that would leave us with $1.1 million available for capital out of an annual operating budget, which is a lot, and it sounds like a lot, and I'm positive on that number. I'm glad it's larger than it used to be.
Could we just pause it for just a minute, so I'd be happy to finish that
Very
in
good,
just
yeah.
a second.
Very good.
We'll tell you
Okay, go ahead.
how much millions our water needs are.
I know,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be happy for just a second.
Okay, sorry.
God.
Right, so if you look in the future, just a few years, we have a few fairly large projects. I mean, we have our annual road kind of a thing, but we also have the project to try to redo, I don't know if I say this wrong, maybe you can correct me, but our spring that's up Battle Creek Canyon that has that whole network up there that's very, very, very old and needs to be updated and fixed and things like that, and that's going to be a large cost. And then the other thing that I've shown there, our reserve balance right now in the water fund is $914,000. Our target to get to that 6 month is $1 million. So the reason I've got zero available for capital funds, that means I don't really have any savings. If we're saving that reserve amount, I don't really have any to add to that. So, but we do have $1 million here. Our debt service reserve requirement, remember that needs to be 1.25, so we're in good shape. There. There's no positions recommended. But in order to get these numbers in line, it would be $1.56 per month increase on the base rate.
So what's the total for this fund?
The total,
Annual revenue?
I probably got it right here. Give me just a second.
for expense.
Yeah. Now, I have this book and I update it regularly, and I hope I have the most current version in here, but, so our operating expenses, which does not count debt, is 2.25 million in the culinary fund, and 586,000 in the secondary fund. Debt service on top of that's another, I'm just gonna give you a round number, 300 plus. It's about 1.8 million. 1.8, yeah.
So 2.5 is culinary, secondary was 0.58.
586,000, yeah, 0.58. And like I said, what we do is if it's directly for the secondary system, we put it in the secondary fund. If it's for both, we kind of put it in the culinary fund. So, I've thought about going to the depths of trying to split that out every time, and I'm not sure it's worth the hassle to do that. Because the truth is, when we report, and all our pledges related to our debt on water is both combined anyway. So it's always really been combined, but there's things we can track separately. Our secondary water, I should point out, so all of these numbers, so like 1.1 million, that's just related to culinary. But these rest of the numbers are related to both culinary and secondary combined. Our secondary number, again, our current rate, and that's on the below half acre rate, is $27.75, which leaves us about $313,000 for capital. And the reserve things, those were counted in the previous slide. So, and that's if we did a 83-cent per month increase right there. Okay, so next, if we talk about storm drain, some of the same issues, really up until about 5 years ago, our storm drain fund really consisted of a small fee that paid for like 3 employees, I think, and a few operating costs, and that's really all that was in the fund. It really, it was to maintain storm drain systems. It wasn't building any storm drain systems. It wasn't doing a lot. With the piping of the Murdoch Canal and the land needs and things that we've had, that's where the debt came in. So, again, I apologize, I can't see that either, so look on that chart here. This one I've got about 19% for personnel, 16% for other operating costs, 12% for overhead allocation, and then about 53% for debt in the storm drain fund. The hard numbers, our current rate is $12.47 per ESU, which, that's what most of us pay. If you have for a home, it's going to be $12.47.
ESU stands for, sorry.
Equivalent service unit. Is that right? We did a 62-cent per month increase there. Our capital money available would be $208,000 for that current year. Realizing here we have a lot of reserves, we have unspent bond proceeds. So this is where when we talk about that $2 million, that's where that $2 million is. It's in there. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at those numbers, we just hit that. So I have to do everything we want to do, obviously. So our debt service reserve number on this fund is, we need to be 1.25. That isn't way over it, but it's fine. With that, and that is adding one position.
Does the 2.4 include the 1.5 unspent?
Yes. Yeah, that's not in addition to that. So really what that 2.4 is the 1.5 that we have and the money in excess. So the 1.2 million minus the 281 plus the 1.5 is that capital money. Yeah, so it does have one additional position. If you're familiar, the other thing that's happened with storm drain, just in general over the past 10 years, is there's a lot more federal regulation that's in there about what we need to monitor. We really need to be on top of that. If I say this wrong, John or Lynn can correct me, but a lot of the EPA regulations that are out there right now, the state is kind of monitoring those, which is a good thing. But we need to respect that and be in compliance as much as we can. Because the last thing you want is federals that be in here regulating. They won't be as kind or as good to work with. So that position would help cover a lot of these inspections that we need to do and testing of we test the water too, test the water and things like that. As well as, if you remember, we eliminated a street sweeper position a few years ago, and am I right, that position might do some of the street sweeping. So hopefully get caught up on some of those things. The sewer fund. Now, I have this slide all set and everything this morning, but I got a letter from TSSB that said, they're having a rate increase of 13.8% of their rates to us. And you can see 63% of the money that we bring in from the sewer goes directly back to TSSB. So when they raise their rates, we kind of have a choice but to pass that along. So most of what gets collected in the sewer fund goes to TSSD. The other things, I got 14% for personnel, very little amount for debt service, 2%. Our overhead allocation is 17%, and then just other operating expenses are the 4% right there. So I was optimistic we wouldn't need to do anything with sewer rates, but with that letter, it would be in other words, for us to just pass along a large enough increase to cover their increase to us, it's probably going to be about $1.65 per household.
Just the pass-through?
Yeah, just to cover our increased costs that we're going to be paying for
So
them.
is that in addition to the .62?
Are you looking at?
Looking at the dollar increase?
The $1.10?
Oh, you got.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, I show .62 on mine.
on sewer or storm drain?
I'm looking at storm drain. Wrong one.
Run sewer, yeah.
Sorry.
So this increase for sewer would be only to cover the TSSD increase. It wouldn't cover anything else. Our capital money available after cost is $350,000 on that. You can see we have good reserves in our sewer fund, so we don't need to recover there, and we have some capital available. But we are proposing an additional position in the sewer fund as well.
So Dean, so I understand on the $1.65, we can, if we do $1.10, that's enough to get us where we need.
Well, this goes back to, this is just the base rate. There's a usage rate.
Oh, got it.
And so, usage rate depends on usage, obviously, for, I think, or but I look at my bill because it's easy for me to look at my bill, and I think I'm probably pretty average. It would be about $1.65 a month.
Okay.
To cover that.
Including the TSSD increase.
Yeah, and that's only the TS. So it would be, we wouldn't get, I kept this, when I had this morning, I had $356,000. I said, what do I need to do if I adjust those things to keep it at $356,000? So there's wouldn't be an additional money to the city, it would all just be additional payment to TSS.
So then, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. The $1.65 represents what?
Base plus use.
Base plus use, okay.
My estimate of what the average homeowner would probably pay extra on the $1.60.
To
Because
cover-
this is just the base.
to cover
rate.
both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dean, when you had this slide before you got the letter, this was at zero, right?
It was.
The dollar increase was at zero. You
Yeah.
weren't proposing an increase in the city.
The other one we have is our garbage and our recycling fund. So if we go back a little bit, our garbage used to just be in part of our general fund, and we separated out as an enterprise fund, partly mostly because I think it makes sense to do that, as it is a utility that we do. But the amount that we received in user rates versus what we paid to our collection, to Allied Waste, and to North Point, there was a little bit of money left over, which covered some overhead and covered some general cleanup in the city, like our city cleanup day and things like that. Every year, North Point has raised their rates a couple times. Allied has raised their, not the current year we're in, I know, but they've raised their rates a couple times. We haven't also because we've had, rates were such an issue over the past few years, we haven't touched anything other than exactly what the rate study said. So we kind of got behind on that a little bit. So so it would be nice to be able to raise that, to be able to cover some of those costs again, so. But that's 83, the reason that says 1651, that's assuming one garbage and one recycling can. Again, when I put these together, it was impossible to put the whole matrix of all the rates up there, so I just kind of tried to get something like that. And those other things don't really apply in the garbage fund because these are not really capital expenditures. The other
So
thing.
it's a direct pass-through.
It is. Now, we charge obviously a little bit more than what Allied Waste charges us, but that covers the.
But between Allied and the tipping fees at the dump,
Yeah,
it's
our,
a pass-through.
yeah.
Over time though, because Allied didn't give us an increase this year because we extended their contract for a year. But in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had some slight increases that we never changed our rates. So this is a little bit of a catch-up. That's right.
And then this is the issue we talked about a few weeks ago.
I'm sorry, how are you funding an increase from Allied and Fountain? Where's that money coming from?
So, Allied charges us a certain rate. We charge obviously a rate higher than that because it covers not only what we pay to them, but also the fee that we pay to the dump. And then recycling what they can do, obviously. But that difference between those is just squeezed a little bit every year, and we just cover it through other general monies, or we just been.
So if there was a shortfall that came out of the general fund?
Sure. This is the issue about buying the, and we have that water available to buy from Orem. We talked about this last time. It was $100,000 to buy that water, and it's pretty easy. If I say 6,700 customers, this would obviously only be a one-time fee. It wouldn't be into the base and it would be charged in the future. But that would be, if we charge it over the watering year, over 5 months, that would be $3 a month. If it was over the whole calendar.
This is the proposed for the next year?
This
For
is
1
just
year.
to cover the
The
cost to buy the
surplus
water.
For this year?
This would run July 1 to July 1.
Of next year? Of
If we did the
2014.
12-month option.
Right.
If we did the 5-month option, it'd probably be July, August.
I mean, we could say, you're gonna use it from May to September, and so we'll just charge it May to September, but charge $3 a month.
Right.
So, I think that's the last slide on those, so. Just to give you an example of what we're, if we did all of those, so not counting the TSSD, which again, we didn't think about till this morning, and the surcharge, it would be about $3.84 a month on average per household.
$3.84, not including the surcharge,
And
not including TSSD.
The TSSD is about $1.65. Obviously, the surcharge is either $3 or $1.25. And if we rank what was important, I think the surcharge we kind of already committed to. If we don't charge that, we're dipping into our water reserves, which aren't quite where we want them to be anyways. The storm drain, I think, is really, I would even say, might be the next important thing, just because you look at the infrastructure and things you have to build up there, and then the TSSD out there, what we mentioned.
So $8.49 if we do all of it.
Yeah. Realizing that this secondary surcharge would go away after a year. Would go away after.
Is that the secondary
the
at 5 months though?
$1.25 or-
Instead of over the 12?
I just charged the three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we did it over 12 months, it would be $1.25 a month instead of the 3.
Yeah.
That is a little nuance. The 580, or the 8 number you came up with would only be for 5 months. And then $3 would come off after the other 7 months.
So 674?
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got on sewer rates, other than that. Answer any questions you got.
Capital projects?
And the capital projects, we can look at those. I really put those out there because, we're trying to fund those projects in large part through rates, And just to give an idea, so
Are these in the budget? Are they in these proposals?
we can put them in the budget assuming if these rates
So
are adopted.
if
these rates
the-
don't get adopted, we need to look at the
If
capital.
the 674 per month over 12 months goes through, then capital projects that are in here can go through.
Yes.
Questions? How much if we don't have capital projects?
So, are you saying how much if we don't raise the,
I'm saying,
If we pulled all the
if we
capital
don't do
projects
these,
out.
then what is the rate increase?
well, I would look at it and say, if we don't raise any of these rates, how much would go away, right?
Yeah.
So, for the water, we'd reduce revenue by about $315,000 if we didn't. So you kind of have to look at it and say, well, let's look on the capital risk and
Yeah, I think
eliminate
I'm
it, push
asking a
back.
different question. I'm asking if you don't do capital projects, do your rates go up?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't do any capital projects, then, other than the TSSD and the secondary water, that's.
So we're still looking at 290?
Yes.
Is the 384 100% attributable to capital?
Yeah, probably. My only caution on doing that, and I know these are hard decisions, we need to look at everything, and right now we're just talking about stuff, but, I'll let you examine. $600 a month, and at the time I said, well, that's a really great rate, but looking back on it, the fact that we have maybe 50-year-old pipes in the ground, and, we have enough rates to cover operations and things like that, and we're not addressing some of those things that led to like a big increase in the future, so, I mean, what we do year to year is one thing, but if we get in the habit of saying you can't raise rates for a long time, and then you kind of get on that.
So I'm not looking at can't raising rates, I'm trying to understand where the rate increases are going. And I think what you said is TSSD plus the shortage of water for secondary this year is $2.90. And then on top of that, 384, which is approximately 100% for capital projects. Do we talk about the capital projects tonight, or is that for another night?
So we have two different types of capital projects we're talking. These are the utility capital projects, and then we have general fund capital projects, which is another list.
Are they in here?
No.
So these are just for the enterprise funds that you
Yes.
presented tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a
Well,
list
but
of-
we have a list of the general fund ones for tonight as well. if you
Oh,
want.
for tonight?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Joy.
But those are, that's a little easier, because we have a certain amount of money, and we just need to choose how to spend it, it's a little different.
That's right.
Okay.
We're not
Any other
discussing
questions?
increased rates for the general fund capital.
Should we move on to,
Well, if we throw everything in kitchen sink, and sidewalks and everything, about 137.
137 million.
Yeah, there's less, but big piece of cake.
So specifically for the roads, we don't have that in front of you tonight in regards. We know that we have a set amount of money, and we already have it in our capital plan as to what treatments we're gonna do on what roads.
kind of let Lynn and Reagan and John and Marty kind of prioritize those and spend.
But that's something the council wants to review, to maybe put the money elsewhere. We're just kind of.
No, I was thinking more that
we put
I've
more
heard a
money
lot
towards
about
it.
roads
Yeah.
during this last few years. And roads themselves is a subject that we kind of need to come up with a solution. My understanding in visiting with Lynn and crew is we're falling behind each year. We need to figure out how to get slightly ahead so that eventually we're caught up.
So initially, when we had our planning retreat, we talked about the Provo model, which is, in essence, creating an enterprise fund for roads, attaching a bill to or attaching a rate to the utility bill. It's gonna be whatever X amount of dollars per month, it's gonna be earmarked specifically for roads. That, we don't have the numbers in front of you to consider that, right now. Part of it is we wanted to see how Provo was gonna play out in regards to their issues. They just implemented that in March, their first, round. So, but if the council
And
wants.
Mapleton also,
Mapleton's doing something similar.
and it starts next month.
So if the council wants to consider doing something July 1st to implement that, that's something we can put together. That's, at this point, something we were gonna consider, I think, for next year. But that's a.
So you wanna see how it goes with Provo first?
Well, yeah,
Well, I think the other thing probably too, they spent months, if not over a year, kind of analyzing and doing studies and doing things like that.
And they did a
That's
lot
what
of
they do.
community outreach, met with all the stakeholders, the public entities that wouldn't be subject to normal path, and did a lot of, groundwork before they implemented the fee.
and they had there's just nuances to the Provo deal. They had a bond expiring that was already charging the residents X amount of dollars per month. So with the bond expiring, they just increased the utility rate that much. So to the citizens, in essence, were held harmless between the property tax bond expiring and the new rates added to the utility bill.
How much
We
is it?
don't have that bond expiring.
Right.
We don't have general fund bond on the rest, so that's not an option.
How much is the amount?
It's $4 a month
$4?
to a single unit. And their unit is by frequency, what do they call that?
Trips per day,
Trips per day.
daily trips.
$4 a month per unit?
And the only thing they're negotiating right now is with the church and the hospital because they're exempt.
BYU and IHC.
CYU and IHC.
And forgive me, what is it generating?
A couple million, I think. 2 million, some numbers.
Even if we don't do it this year, I'd be interested in seeing what those numbers are and how they would apply to us. Because I think we need to be
Need to have that
prepared.
discussion.
We need to have a discussion about roads.
Okay. So we'll have those on the 29th
Okay.
of April.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dean. So our general capital money, what we have is we have some of our general fund surplus from last year, as well as kind of an anticipated surplus at the end of this year. Our money from last year is $168,000. I'm anticipating another $250,000 by the end of the year that we could use in the upcoming year for capital projects. So we put a list together. The total funds is $418,000 there. The actual amount of projects is $500,000, but the large one is Shannon Fields. So we're losing a softball diamond up there, which the school district will help us build down here. There's room for 2 softball diamonds. It'd be nice to get them built. We could build. In fact, what it was, we could use park impact fees if we chose to build one of them. The school district is paying for a portion of the second one, but we need another $125,000 to do that. So if we did all of these projects, it actually it would get into our general fund balance. So I don't know if we want to list these one by one or want to look and just ask a few questions.
What's the fund balance right now?
In our general fund,
Yep.
it's about 2.4 million.
That's the unallocated?
Yes.
And your projects add up to just over 500?
500,000, right?
So are you saying, tell me about the relationship between the 500 and the 418?
The 418 is just the 168,000. That's from our last year's surplus that has not been spent yet. And I'm anticipating another 250,000 at the end of the year, so that's just those two numbers added together.
And the new capital projects are 5,
Right.
so you're short around 82?
Yeah, so we can look at these and if we don't want to dip into, we don't want to lower that, then we need to eliminate some of
Okay.
these. I don't know, Scott, if you wanna just, I don't know if you wanna read these one by one or just ask some questions.
You know, and as staff, we haven't necessarily prioritized these to get this down to the 418. And I was just telling Sherry, we do have a number on the carpet, which I forgot to give to Dean to put in here, and I want to say that was 28,000 to recarpet the library. And
28?
yeah, 28. And then we also have a number to repaint in there, but I don't know if that's what we put under the remodel. Remember, Dean?
I believe so. It's in there somewhere.
So I think the
I'm sure it's
remodel.
under the remodel, because it was on that.
Okay, so and those numbers are consistent. So I guess part of what we want is a flavor of, you can tell, we need mowers, which is a pretty big issue for the parks. And then we have a list of things in there to, for our library, to, in essence, new carpet, new paint, a few other upgrades that we need, furniture, electrical. So if that's something as a city council that you want to see happen with the library, we can kind of consider those as a lump. We have some police expenditures for new motorcycles and tasers, and a task force vehicle, and then we have some parks vehicles in the trailer, and ATUV is for cemetery. And we have a couple of swimming pool expenditures, we have some Lions Center expenditures, and then we have 3 recreation expenditures, City Hall roof, and then the swimming pool slide on, of course, another swimming pool expenditure. Gate at the rec center, right now you ever been there at noon, we put cones out so that when the kids get done with their preschool, they have a safe passage, because right at the same time preschool gets out is lunchtime for the high school. So we put some cones out so the kids can kind of get from their door to the parking lot. But then we find out high school kids just run right over the cones. And so we're considering actually putting a physical gate there. That's what that is. In the administrative offices, we'd like to move things around a little bit there. This was something that we did 3 years ago. We're finding out that maybe the way we did it isn't as effective as what we want. And then on top of that, we've talked about securing that entrance, of actually putting glass up. Right now, if somebody came in and wanted to get into the back of the administrative offices, they could just hop right where June sits, or where our utility building window is, or that door is unlocked, it's not secure. So we talked about securing that door, putting a code thing on it, and then where we're interfacing with the public, we have some glass up there, so that when we're, in essence, just secure. If somebody wants to get back into the back of the administrative offices, we have to let them in. And then Chrisville Park is I believe we have a resident request, they'd like to see the road paved into that park, and so we put that number on here. So,
Wait, Dion had a comment.
Sorry, I did get some numbers on the Manila backstop, and it's about 11,000 per diamond, so 44,000 would be that one.
How much?
44.
the main one I think that we would like to recommend would be the Shannon Fields. We'd really like to get both well, I don't know if we can afford both the fields. Well, maybe we can. As we use impact fees, the money we're going to get from the school district, and then some general money, we'd like to get both those fields built this year. So
Yeah, I think this money covered the field, but didn't cover
the parking lot and the road leading into it. So.
So you're at 572, 775. 572, 775.
So what we'll ask the council tonight, is there anything on here that you absolutely think doesn't need to be done this year?
Can you tell us about the roof?
The
The
committee
City Hall
well, or
roof?
the city hall roof?
Is that
You know,
something?
do you wanna?
Yeah, so it just has one layer shingles, they're asphalt now. They were put on about 20 years ago. And we're starting to see a lot of, well, on the PD side especially, quite a few weeks. We another layer of asphalt shingles to it.
I don't know, my feeling is with the prospect of the public safety building being approved that, well, I guess we'd still be using community development over there.
Yeah, we'll still need that full building.
So I have a question though on the remodeling of the administrative offices. We just did that.
That's what I said 3 years ago.
Yeah, so I have a little heartburn on that,
Sure.
doing that again.
And that's fair enough, and, I mean, I recognize as I've talked with Kathy and what we did to have that set up, probably at this point isn't as effective as what we were hoping.
What about, so your concern is the security or the safety, but,
There's two parts. One is actually doing a little bit of a remodel to, go from 2 windows to 1 window. We
Right.
currently have two windows to go to 1 window. And then the additional cost, I think that would cost us $3,000 or whatever, but that glass gets pretty expensive to put that up. in.
so more it's the, where Kathy's sitting is the, more of the concern?
As far as security,
Yeah,
any opening that we have that somebody can jump through is a concern. So the utility building as well, we don't have somebody that sits right there, but somebody could access in there if they wanted to get in there. And that's, I mean, that's just a decision for us to decide if that's important to us or not. I mean, the police side's secure, obviously community development out here is not secure. The administrative offices right now is not secure.
is there, not that I'm whatever, but is there just some, and restructuring of where people sit in the administration area?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably, we would do that anyway if we just keep it
Yeah.
as is.
Yeah,
This was gonna, I think, maybe enhance a little better how the flow of people coming in is gonna go.
because I feel a little bit awkward of the whole who's sitting where situation, not
Uh-huh.
awkward, but just wondering if that couldn't be strategized a little bit better or differently.
Yeah, we have things in mind to move people around, whether this happens or not.
Right.
How about
Those are just-
police radios? I think Mr. D'Onofrio made a plea at our Heroes Behind the Badge that we solve the police radio concern. And are they on here?
Hello over there.
I've never seen those.
So as far as the radios go, we've just been
That's,
plugging forward year by year. The colonels, don't know what type of donation we'd be looking at this year from them. We've just been buying as we can. And then I've talked with, we have like 9 patrol vehicles that we're looking at, that the leases are up this year. So we were looking at we've never had in-car radios, which is a huge safety issue. So we were looking at what it would cost to roll in-car radios into a lease or a buyout plan.
So those would be a capital lease?
Yeah, if we did that, we would just include it with the price of the car, so, you know, just paying some cost of the car. I have that number somewhere, I'm not sure if I have it right now. I don't have it. Well, it was, I think to do all 9 car, in my mind, it was $4,000 or $5,000 a year more on top of the lease than that.
Yeah, I think I'm just asking to make sure that the police radios are considered somewhere.
Sure. No, we talked about the radios, Scott, Mike, and I, and you know, some Mike can tell me if we're wrong, but some of the worst radios have been replaced with some new radios. Obviously, the cost to replace all of the radios was $2,500 a piece.
They are.
So times
Yeah, at
20
this
of them.
point, we've been able, through donations and some of our, well, frankly, my radio line item will probably go this year, because we pushed it as far as we could. But,
So if we can get a few, I think the idea is if we can replace a few every year.
we've got our worst ones out of service. I've spoken to Motorola, and originally Motorola was pushing, we were going digital through UCAN, and our radios would just be obsolete. They got a ton of pushback on that, and good news is we've got our very worst radios out of service, and good radios in our patrolmen's hands for the most part. We still need to replace quite a few radios.
How many?
To get with our auxiliary radios for our VIPs and our reserves and everything else, we've got 28 radios.
28? 2,400 apiece?
And that's, well, 24 unless we can, and I've spoken to Motorola directly, their corporate. And they'll run a special where they'll give $400 or $500 off a radio.
Per?
Per radio, and they have told me, they've not promised me, but they've told me that they will do what they can to offer that to us.
56 grand. So, Scott, have you folks prioritized your list?
We've sort of prioritized within each department, but we have not prioritized this whole list for you guys.
Can you do that?
We can. We go through and determine what we feel is the most important, and give it to you, most important according to us at least.
Okay.
So part of tonight was if there's anything on here that we absolutely wouldn't want to see off.
Well, I think it also gives us some time to ask
Sure.
those questions
Yep.
too
Yeah,
in the next
Now you've
week.
got the list in
I
front
think
of you.
right now it's kind of like, I would like to just be able to, and not take everybody's time here, but to individually kind of ask and get a feel for that on our own time.
That'd be great.
So the plan would be a prioritized list by
29th of April.
29th.
29th of April is going to be another budget work session.
Okay.
And that's the one where we'll probably need to have decisions made, so that we can.
And what about these capital projects? On the enterprise funds?
A matter of revision with David and all the first guys and sheets to,
So the rates represent a rate increase to the public, and we should have priority, right? Prioritized list of the capital projects so that we understand where we're drawing a line, if we're drawing a line. Otherwise, we're just saying they're all critical and we're gonna raise the rate.
well, I think all of those projects that are on there are going to need to be done, whether it's next year or 5 years from now, or whatever it is. And so a lot of it's just a matter of saying, well, you can't do it this year, so it's gonna get pushed back. And I think we could, between our engineers and the public works people, I think they could do that pretty quickly.
Can we ask for that too then?
Sure.
Okay. So by the 29th, we'll have a prioritized list of the general fund items, including anything else that you folks might have not put on there. And then prioritized list on the enterprise fund capital projects. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
And a discussion on roads.
Yeah, we'll have that number, so.
Anybody else? Is there anything else you want to bring up as part of the budget that we need to ask for by the 29th of April?
I would, when you're talking about roads,
Yeah.
I would like to know, if we were to implement something like Provo or the other cities, what would that dollar amount be for us?
Yeah, so the revenues will generate. For Provo, it's 2 million, we need to figure out what it's gonna be.
Right.
Yeah,
I would
to
like
some
a
degree,
dollar
that's a
amount, I
range
would like a
because-
monthly dollar amount.
Yep.
So in my mind right now, I'm thinking, so if we didn't do the 384 of the capital projects at the moment, and we did the road tax
At 384.
at that amount, do the water, our debt to Ora, or to whoever gave us the water, and the TSSD.
And then I'd also.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can calculate that to say this is how much revenue that would generate if we did 384 for roads.
Uh-huh.
That's a pretty easy calculation.
It's just just something off the top of my head, not that I'm saying that would be.
When I say it's easy for us to figure out the residential component of that.
Sure.
The commercial component might be a little more difficult, but we'll have an estimate for you that is something you can wrap your arms around and make a decision on.
So, in addition to what Cindy's saying, I think what I'm interested in is the new number is 137 million in.
Yeah, it depends on how far you wanna go with it, Matt.
So 137 million is like
Road.
rebuilding and fixing, right?
Over 20.
Over 20 years. And we're falling behind each year. What is it going to take for us to spend per year to get ahead of the curve so that we are catching up rather than falling behind? I'd like to know what that number is, and then what it breaks out to in terms of an increase, and how much per month.
And then I'd like to know, I mean, I don't know, there's gotta be another city besides Provo, either in the state of Utah or possibly even in neighboring states that are doing a road fee similar to what Provo's doing. So then I hate to wait to take 8 months to see if it works for them, and then we implement it. So I don't know if there's a way to find out if it's worked, you know, there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel, but I just hate spending this much time waiting to see if it's gonna work with Provo, when we could be implementing it sooner in our city if it is successful somewhere else, we can kinda see what they did to make that successful.
Sure.
So we can get going on that before we wait for.
Provo is the first one in the state, though.
Yeah.
What
And
about,
in Utah
I mean, there's
done
gotta be
it.
someone in the nation.
So outside the state, we can look that up.
Okay.
The challenge will be what their laws
Yeah, it's a little bit different, 'cause they're different, but general idea, you know, of how, I don't know if that's even possible to get information on, but.
We'll see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see what's out there.
Well, it seems like a really good idea, I'm not sure why other people haven't, but maybe there's a reason
Well,
why they haven't.
there's some legal reasons
There's some
behind it,
legal
and
reasons
that's
for
kind of
it.
why we're a little hesitant, because Provo's gonna be challenged legally on this, and how that's gonna play out.
Okay.
Roads have always been a general fund service, and to charge a utility rate for roads is brand new territory, so.
Okay.
But we don't necessarily need to turn it into an enterprise fund. What we need to understand is how much do we have to spend to be able to get it
Sure.
up to catching up, right?
The utility fee is just one method of
You're right,
doing it.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, property tax is another method to fund it, and this is what Provo's run into, is they have tax exempt properties, BYU, IHC, that don't pay property tax, and so they've chosen to do the fee to capture those that are actually using the roads to help pay for the fee. That's,
So I'll tell you where this is, where I'm leading with this is, we know that our citizens complain about our roads. We should put in front of the citizens what the liability is for the roads, how long and how much it would take to get caught up and repair the roads, what that translates to in terms of a property tax increase to the citizens, and ask the citizens if they're willing to pay for that so they can have their roads fixed.
sure.
So is the legal issue, is the only legal issue with the tax exempt things, because we don't have a hospital or?
No,
Okay.
the way, and Scott touched on it, it's the fact that it's new ground charging a utility fee for something that's always been part of the general fund. So there may be, I don't know that there are positively going to be, but there may be some legal challenges to municipality funding roads that way.
So and is that why they called it a fund?
That's why they call it a utility fee.
A user fee as
A user
opposed to a
fee
tax.
Instead of a tax. And so there's just some gray area in the law with regard to that, and so Provo just said, you know, we think it's gonna be fine, we're not 100% sure, don't everybody jump on the bandwagon and do this tomorrow, because we need to see what's coming down.
So Mapleton did it, they said we're gonna do this tomorrow.
Mapleton's a little smaller than we are.
So I wrote down 4 things that I can remember. The revenue generated by the 384 to do roads, the amount needed to get ahead of the curve, whether it's a utility fee or not, prioritized list of capital projects for the general fund, prioritized list of the capital projects for the enterprise funds.
That's right.
Were there any other items, council? have those by April 29th, right?
Yes. No, Sid requested too that we look at outside agencies as well, outside the state.
Outside the state, for people that have done a road type of thing, yeah. Okay.
Have you ever heard of anything like that? Outside the state?
I'm not aware, but I don't know if I paid that much attention.
Okay, anything else, Dean?
Lots.
Yeah, we got more.
Okay, let's go.
Position dog staffing.
How are those chairs out there?
That's not on our capital.
I think that needs to be on
Chairs
the capital.
For the citizens.
We've got one extra one at a company that whoever wants it.
Really? Except sometimes they're not very comfortable.